this. So you guys just stop talking about Jeffrey Epstein. And I am telling you that I will be the very last person that will stop talking about Jeffrey Epstein. I will do his entire genealogy backwards and forwards, including everybody around him, their genealogy, before we let go of this. Because when it comes to children, I'm telling you guys, the left and the right, we have definitely got to come together on this and not let it go. So that's what I'm going to say about that topic. Also going to tell you what Tucker, who I am very concerned about, what's going on with him. But first, I want to throw it to a few of our sponsors. Foremost, we have Monorail, because I'm sure that you guys are tired of investing your... All right, you guys, Tucker Carlson. Tell you something about him. He is the man of the hour, potentially the man of the last couple of years. His exit from Fox News, legendary. You know, he's not going to stop talking about what's going on in Ukraine, the Ukraine corruption. They kick him out. They're like, no, you cannot stand up to the military-industrial complex. I wouldn't even say he rebuilt. It was like he never left. And yeah, when you talk about the military-industrial complex, inevitably you're going to land back. You're going to be discussing Israel. That's just how it works. And he's been discussing Israel from a military-industrial complex perspective, but also he is speaking about Jeffrey Epstein. And now Israel is rising up against Tucker. They already were, in case you missed it, but they are raising alarms. So first and foremost, I'll tell you what he said. I'll show you what he said. He was speaking at Turning Point USA, their annual conference that takes place in Tampa, Florida. And here is what he said. And the crowd, which means young students coming up, loved it. Take a listen.
And I think the real answer is Jeffrey Epstein was working on behalf of intel services, probably not American. And we have every right to ask, on whose behalf was he working? How does a guy go from being a math teacher at the Dalton School in the late 70s with no college degree to having multiple airplanes, a private island, and the largest residential house in Manhattan? Where did all the money come from? And no one has ever gotten to the bottom of that because no one has ever tried. And moreover, it's extremely obvious to anyone who watches that this guy had direct connections to a foreign government. Now, no one's allowed to say that that foreign government is Israel because we have been somehow cowed into thinking that that's naughty. There is nothing wrong with saying that. There is nothing hateful about saying that. There's nothing anti-Semitic about saying that. There's nothing even anti-Israel about saying that. I've spent my entire life pretty much in Washington, where I knew and loved a number of people, including one very close person who worked at CIA. That has never prohibited me from saying, I think the CIA has done some horrible things, murdered a bunch of people, participated in the murder of a sitting U.S. president. It's got a whole trail of crimes. That doesn't make me a disloyal American. It doesn't make me anti-American in any sense. I was born here. My family's been here for hundreds of years. I love this country. That's why I live here. So criticizing the behavior of a government agency does not make you a hater. It makes you a free person. It makes you a citizen. You're allowed to do that because you're not a slave. You're a citizen.
Okay, a lot I could say here. First and foremost, just Tucker is on that stage. I don't see myself there. And yet you are going to see that in this response to this, my name gets drafted again. It is very clear by now that Tucker and I are on Israel, suddenly getting inspired to go after Candice and Tucker as if we work together. We don't work together. I haven't done a show in years. But they are finding that we are too effective in waking up people to the Israel question. And we've got a lot of questions about Israel. So Tucker gives that speech. Tucker is trending. Candice gets drafted into it. Now, Charlie Kirk runs Turning Point USA. I used to work with Turning Point USA. Amichai Chikli, okay, that's his name. He is the minister of truth, as I'm calling it, the propaganda arm of Israel, decides to write an open letter to Charlie Kirk about this. I'm not going to read this whole letter, but I'm going to show you it. This is on Twitter. He released it. Incredibly, even though he's going to mention me in this, he blocks me. So I can't respond because he's about to tell a lie. You should realize by now that in order to support Israel, you have to be really comfortable lying through your teeth. You feel nothing when you lie. He even puts me in quotations. So he's alleging, this is a direct quote that I wrote. He starts by saying, Charlie, like many others, I've been following your remarkable journey from afar. I watched Tucker Carlson's speech at your conference, your debate with Megyn Kelly, and I must admit I was filled with sorrow. I don't know whether Jeffrey Epstein was an intelligence asset for any agency. Well, you should, because you're clearly one. I would certainly like to know. In particular, I would like to understand his connection to the kind of people who sought to sell out the land of Israel to the Palestinians. people like the former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, blah, blah, blah. He goes on, yet the message conveyed at your conference with Tucker Carlson as keynote speaker just days after his sycophantic interview with the Iranian terror regime was unmistakable. Israel was behind Epstein. The audience applauded. Everyone seemed pleased, especially the Qataris and their jihadist terror channel, Al Jazeera. By the way, it would be fascinating to uncover the depth and the nature of their connection to influencers such as Tucker Carlson and others. Okay, here we go. Just going to do the Qatari smear right away. Always good to do that. Jumping right into that. Then he says, we see Candice Owens publicly claim that, quote, the Israelis knew in advance about 9/11 and didn't warn the U.S. and, quote, Israelis killed JFK. That, quote, Jews committed a Holocaust against Christians, even worse than Hitler's, and that, like literally Jews committed a Holocaust against Christians worse than Hitler's. These are not direct quotes. And that, quote, Mengele never performed horrific experiments in Auschwitz. He just puts in quotation marks. He has to block me because he's making it up. Like nobody has ever heard me say Mengele never performed horrific experiments in Auschwitz. No one's ever heard me say the Jews committed a Holocaust against Christians. But he's doing this because he's got to appeal to the public and make it seem like, of course, they constantly have to go after the emotionality surrounding the Holocaust. Oh, these people are beyond reproach. Candice is up there saying all these things. And also she might be funded by Qatar. He's lying. And again, why am I even being brought into this? I was not at this conference. I did not speak on stage with Tucker. Again, Operation Candice and Tucker, you're starting to see this. But it gets even scarier because they're losing the propaganda war. They know they're losing the propaganda war. And Ami Kai knows this because he actually mentioned me and Tucker in the same sentence a while ago when he was speaking to the Jerusalem Post and said that they wanted to start controlling the conversation on social media to combat, quote unquote, anti-Semitism. That's his job, to combat anti-Semitism, which is code for to censor the speech of Americans, right? His job is to censor the speech of Americans because Americans are waking up to the fact that Israel is problematic. It just is, right? But what gets scary is that because they're losing this war, they're getting desperate. And the former prime minister of Israel has now tweeted against Tucker Carlson, okay, which means they are sounding the alarms. Again, panic. We can't control the American mindset anymore. America is the military might, and we need to stop the influence of people like Tucker Carlson. I'm Naftali Bennett, the former prime minister. If I write this tweet, I can probably get people to shut up. Now I'm coming down to speak about Tucker Carlson. Former prime minister, this is crazy, right? This on Twitter, on X. He writes, as a former Israeli prime minister, with the Mossad having reported directly to me, I say to you with 100% certainty, the accusation that Jeffrey Epstein somehow worked for Israel or the Mossad running a blackmail ring is categorically and totally false. Epstein's conduct, both the criminal and the merely despicable, had nothing whatsoever to do with the Mossad or the state of Israel. Epstein never worked for the Mossad. The accusation is a lie being peddled by prominent online personalities such as Tucker Carlson, pretending that they know things that they don't. They just make things up and they say it with confidence, and these lies stick because it's Israel. There's a vicious wave of slander and lies against my country and my people, and we just won't take it anymore. Oh, first off, what do you mean you just won't take it anymore? That's a laced threat coming from Israel, because when you guys want things to happen, you make them happen. You get very lucky, you know? You want war with Afghanistan, the Middle East, and the towers go down, you know? You want AIPAC not to register as a foreign for FARA, and suddenly a president gets shot in a moving vehicle in Dallas. I don't like your luck, is what I'll say about you, Israel. So when you say we're not going to take it anymore, and you're a prime minister going after a journalist in America, it's not landing the way you think it's landing. Tucker responds, he says this, he says, you, quote, just won't take it anymore? Instead of issuing threats on social media, why don't you sit down for a rational interview on Jeffrey Epstein's ties to the Israeli government? We'll reach out to your office this morning. Now, I'm going to guess that now he's not going to take the bait on that, because, again, one of the things that you realize is that in order to support Israel, you have to be really comfortable lying all the time, like all the time. And Naftali Bennett, in case that name does not sound familiar to you, well, before he became prime minister, he was caught, or willfully speaking, he wasn't exactly caught, discussing how he was putting together a cell of people. I'm not kidding. This guy that you just saw tweeting that at Tucker, putting together a cell of people in Israel to edit Wikipedia so that they could control the information that people were reading on Wikipedia to make sure that it had a slight bend towards supporting Israel's, as a state, the Zionist cause. This is Naftali, the former prime minister, before he became prime minister, on the news in Israel discussing how they were infiltrating Wikipedia. Take a listen.
In conjunction with My Israel, has arranged instruction day for wiki editors. The goal of the day is to teach people how to edit in Wikipedia, which is the #1 source of information today in the world. As a way of example, if someone searches the Gaza flotilla, we want to be there. We want to be the guys who influence what is written there, how it's written, and to ensure that it's balanced and Zionist in nature.
They want the nature of Wikipedia to be Zionist. Yeah, so they were just training us up right at the beginning of this. They understood and have always understood that it's an information war. That's the reason that they have their journalists writing furiously about Tucker. The information war is the reason why they've got these pastors out talking about Tucker Carlson and Candice Owens and Cameron Owens, right? Candice Owen. That's why they've got these influencers on TikTok. What happened to Tucker Carlson and Candice Owen? They are decades ahead of us in terms of controlling the information that's on the web. Okay, that is the reason why some of these organizations, entire news organizations like the New York Post, just have a pro-Israel slant. They just can't write anything bad about Israel. They just can't do it. Israel could blow up children in broad daylight as they're doing, and they can't tell you about that. Bibi Netanyahu could literally be facing trials regarding his administration's connections to Qatar, and those people will not cover it, but they will try to smear Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens as connected to Qatar, when I've said 1,000 times on record, I've never taken a single dollar from Qatar. I've never even taken a meeting to that effect. Forget even taking money. I've never even spoken to a Qatari official. Not opposed to it. But I'm not doing that. They lie. And they're allowed to lie, and they're allowed to edit, and they're allowed to put quotation marks where you haven't. They smear and they libel for a living. And you don't have to do that if you're telling the truth, okay? You don't have to smear and libel and make up fake quotations and block people so that you can put out those quotations because you're telling the truth. So I'm going to say, Tucker Carlson, you probably, look, people say the same thing about me, but I would be highly concerned if Naftali Bennett, who essentially put together an information cell on Wikipedia, is coming out and trying to say to the world that what you are saying is false. And that's actually probably the most evidence to date that what you are saying is definitely true. And they're spiraling because they're losing the information war. And Epstein is at the crux of it all, which is why we are not going to let that story go. All right, guys, I want to get to some of your comments first. I want to talk to you about Pure Talk, because if you are with Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile, you are this issue and Iran-Contra if you so desire. Yeah, I so desire. And I did not know. Could you fact check that if you guys quickly in the control room? Did Attorney General Barr visit him before he committed suicide? That would be just unbelievably wild. I can't accept that, Irma. I cannot accept that.
Recent studies have shown that over 7...
Tom Miller writes, anytime I'm overwhelmed by all of this, I just think I'm so proud to be a part of the little people. I love my humble life. I'm a good person. And I have faith that all of this evil will come to light. Oh, have faith, because it's coming to light right now. Naftali Bennett is not out there talking about Tucker Carlson, a journalist in America, because, evil is in the dark. If evil's in the dark, they're not saying anything. Everybody's talking about it, right? They cannot control this, no matter how many journalists, no matter how many pastors. They cannot get the public, no matter sending out President Trump. They cannot control the response. They cannot control the demand. They cannot slow down the awakening that is taking place. Tanya writes, I don't like being the conspiracy theorist, but either he was killed or he is still alive. Epstein has become an idea, and we have to be united for this. I totally agree with you. And here's what I'll say. New York especially, like I just could totally see a tunnel system getting him out somehow. I don't know what happened, but I do know that I don't accept the narrative that has been presented to us. So I'm leaving everything open because the response that we are getting from the state, the lies and the gaslighting signals the fact that they are hiding something big. That's what I would say. Tanya writes, AP writes, Trump isn't in the files, but he's protecting a person or people in his orbit that are. He fell out with Epstein back in 2004, banned him from Mar-a-Lago in 2007 for making passes at a 17-year-old. He is not in them. I tend to agree with you. I personally do not think that Trump is implicated in the files in a sexual way, is what I will say. I do think that he could be protecting people in his orbit, or he is terrified for his life because Israel is running the government with blackmail. And yeah, it's got to be one of these options. Blue Jeans writes, you are the voice for the people, Candice. Stay safe and never let them silence you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I appreciate your guys and all of your support. BCO writes, poll dead or alive. Let's not forget Bondi is funding Qatar through her company. That's treason. They're protecting family names and other countries. Seems our government forgot about the Articles of Confederation and the Sherman Act. You are totally correct about that. And yeah, Pam Bondi is registered under FARA. So yeah, take that for what you will. It is quite ironic that they accuse everyone else of being funded by Qatar and kind of leave out the connections that people like Bibi Netanyahu and Pam Bondi and Israel, the state, which does tons of business with Qatar, real estate business, diamond business, like pretending that Qatar is like off limits. It requires American ignorance. Like you have to not know all that Israel does and all the work that they do with Qatar to think that somehow if an American journalist was being funded by Qatar, that it would represent a conflict of interest, because it certainly wouldn't if it doesn't represent a conflict of interest for people in Israel to work with them. D writes, everyone's talking about Mossad and Israel, but no one ever talks about the king. I don't think the Brits ever forgot about the runaways. They would love to see our downfall too. And I think there are some connections in general to Israel and a lot of countries. I think probably a blackmail ring is not just going to be something that they execute in America. If you want to have power, you're a tiny country. There's no reason why you should be having so much military success in that region why are literally compelled, right? They're compelled because of blackmail. It's ridiculous, the amount of funding that they get. We turn the other cheek when they commit crimes. USS Liberty, the fact that those guys are still alive and saying what happened to them on that day and they're being gaslit and called anti-Semitic, they survived. If you haven't watched my USS Liberty episode, it's an absolute must watch. Total tearjerker, but an absolute must watch to really understand what Israel has gotten away with since LBJ became president. Anyways, the Canaanite writes, today there's a protest in the last fully Christian city in Palestine, the city of Tebeh. Yeah, we've talked about this, and I shared this on my X. The heads of all the major churches are all protesting today because they have been kicked out of their homes since October 7th. Yeah, they're taking more land. This is what Israel does. They just take land. They send their radical settlers there. They burn the agriculture. They kill animals to make sure they make things unlivable. And then they just take the land. They don't pay for it, nothing. They just go, this land's ours because we say it is, and we are chosen. Chosen for what and by who would be my question. Okay? Demons do this, not good people. Just to be clear, in case it was not clear where I stood on this issue. Just a producer's note, they wrote that Barr did not visit Epstein. So that is not true. The New York Post reported on it that he did, and then they retracted the story. That's weird. New York Post especially. Do you want to pull that up? You said you had the Newsweek article. The visit did not happen. The claim comes from a now partially retracted New York Post story in which a mob informant, Louis Cosman, suggested that Barr had visited Epstein's jail about the time that Epstein was found in his cell with Bruce, said the Attorney General never visits jails. Something's not right there. Wow. That's interesting. Okay. I don't know what to believe. I don't know what to say about that. We'll just read it to you as it is. Yeah, the story was repeated by other news sources with headlines more explicitly concluding that what the Post had reported. However, as later noted, this is just disputed. They can't say it didn't happen, just say it's disputed. That's it. The New York Post has removed the reference to Barr, and I guess now they're ignoring the mob informant, Louis Cosman. Very interesting. Why would this guy say that? Did he think that he would get away with lying about the Attorney General? Who knows? Anyways, we fact-checked that for you live so that you could see. All right, guys, that is all that we have for today. If you'd like to support my journalism, independent journalism, please head over to CandiceOwens.com. While you're there, you can pre-order my book. You can buy a t-shirt. You can buy a hat. You can subscribe and you watch A Shot in the Dark, which is fantastic content for